The media is trying everything within their means to completely bury or even destroy, embarrass Pierre Poilievre and prop up the Liberals. But that doesn't seem to work in press conferences or in exclusive one-on-one interviews. And let's be honest, that also doesn't work in the House of Commons. It just feels like there's a reoccurring pattern of it doesn't work against Pierre Poilievre. So what we're going to be taking a look at today is a one-on-one sit down with a woke journalist or reporter who completely gets embarrassed by Pierre Poilievre, just badgering him. What about this and what about that? And Pierre is navigating those waters tremendously well. So we're going to start off with that, and then we're going to revisit yesterday's announcement about tax cuts and about reinvesting energy, or specifically investing more money into our energy sector here in Canada. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's start off with this one-on-one with a reporter.
The election campaign is being closely watched given the array of issues Canadians are facing. We have the opportunity today to speak to the leader of the federal Conservative Party. Pierre Poilievre joins us now from the campaign trail in New Brunswick. Thanks for your time tonight and joining us on The Close.
Great to be with you.
So you announced today the Canada First National Energy Corridor to get Canadian product to other international markets, but it would require all provinces to buy in. So at this point, can you guarantee cooperation?
Well, a lot of these decisions are in fact federal, and I will make sure that we use our powers to get pipelines built. Let's make sure that we understand that the reason that no pipelines got built across Canada during the lost Liberal decade is not because the provinces blocked it, it's because the Liberals blocked it. They brought in the No New Pipelines Law C-69, which makes it impossible to get anything built. They changed the rules in the middle of the game after TransCanada promised to build Energy East, killing that project. And the same radical, keep it in the ground, anti-energy ideology dominates in the Liberal Party today. Stephen Guilbeault, who chained himself to fences and got arrested for climbing buildings to block pipelines, is now responsible for the Quebec ministry of the Carney government. So it's the same Liberals with the same ministers, the same promises that killed pipelines and drove $500 billion south. What we need now is a new Conservative government that will put Canada first for a change. And I will lay out a national energy corridor, give pre-approval for all the federal permitting so that businesses know what they're allowed to build and what standards and specs they have to meet to build it. Those will be legally binding, and that will allow us to get massive projects built across this country and put Canada first. You know, the Liberals keep giving our energy at discounts to Donald Trump. I want to reverse that Liberal lost decade by bringing real change to put Canada first.
Okay, so in 2017, as you know, Quebec opposed the Energy East pipeline, which helped to kill the project. The province
They
now says
still
it's
oppose
open
it
to the idea of new energy projects. But how would you handle resistance from Quebec?
Well, two things. One, Quebec did not kill the project. The Liberals did.
Use emergency powers and trample over Quebec. Honestly, I don't know who needs to hear this, but fuck Quebec. 100%, without a doubt, fuck Quebec and the politicians. They are blocking this country from finishing the pipeline. They keep coming out saying they don't want the pipeline to be done. I don't know who needs to hear that, but fuck Quebec. Like they should be silenced. Use emergency powers if you have to. I know that sounds crazy for me to advocate for that, but Quebec is honestly a leech on our society right now.
They changed the rules in the middle of the project. After TransCanada had spent $1 billion, they realized they weren't going to get it approved, and that's why they gave up and took the money to the States. Another reason why Donald Trump wants the Liberals back in power is because he keeps sending jobs and energy to the States at discounts. So in Quebec today, 75% of people support pipelines.
Yeah, the government doesn't, though.
The premise that Quebecers are the problem. They want pipelines. The problem is an anti-resource Liberal government. And Mr. Carney has been the high priest of hypocrisy on this. He personally opposed pipeline projects. He testified against the Northern Gateway pipeline in a parliamentary committee 3 years ago. He has all the same anti-energy, anti-petroleum MPs in his ministry, in his cabinet today. If you vote the same, you'll get the same. You need is a new Conservative government that will put Canada first, repeal C-69, the Liberal No New Pipelines law, get rid of the energy cap, put in place shovel-ready zones that have pre-permitting, and set out a national energy corridor so we can build pipelines, rail lines, transmission lines, highways, and more across this country, an east-west powerhouse that no longer relies on the Americans.
On the weekend, you also announced a Canada First reinvestment tax cut. So no capital gains if you sell an asset.
Very nice.
If the money is then reinvested in Canada. But the cost is $10.5 billion during the life of this program. What other programs will have to cut, or how many other programs would we have to lose to make up for that loss in federal income?
We will get rid of bureaucracy, consultants, handouts to corporate insiders that ship jobs overseas. We will also cut back on foreign aid. We'll bring in a dollar-for-dollar law that caps government spending, requiring we find equal savings for every new expenditure. After the lost Liberal decade of out-of-control spending, rising taxes, and blocking projects, the Liberals have driven $500 billion south. I want to bring it home. So what we're proposing is to eliminate capital gains tax on reinvested gains. So if you're a small businessman, you're selling your business after 40 years, instead of paying capital gains tax, you could reinvest it, say, in Canadian stocks to fund companies building, hiring, and growing. If you're, for example, a manufacturing company who has a vacant piece of land, you could sell that off, reinvest the money in a new assembly line or CNC machine to expand production while that vacant land goes to a home builder that builds homes. Or if you're a company that's invested out of Canada and you want to bring the money home, well, now you have a powerful tax-free opportunity to do it. And finally, if you're someone who sells an investment, is just looking for a stock to buy, if you invest abroad, you'll pay the capital gains tax on your disposition, but if you invest here at home, you'll pay no capital gains tax. This is going to be economic rocket fuel to launch our economy over the Americans, bring home the $500 billion that the Liberals drove south, and build the economic fortress we need to stand up to the Americans from a position of strength.
So let me...
Well, it's not just stand up to Americans. It's also put more money into our economy and grow within. And people should want to be putting money into our economy through investments, whether it's real estate or into the market. And a lot of people have been, buying real estate as investments in America because there's just better incentives, better pricing, better tax, loopholes and things like that. And same kind of better returns with the American market, putting your money into the S&P 500, either in American funds or in the ETF in Canada that tracks the S&P. You're still putting it into the S&P, and there's just more money to be made in the American stock market and less taxes for certain things. So Canada needs to put more incentives on investing here in Canada, and that's how we're going to grow our economy, partly how we're going to grow our economy. So Pierre's on the right track with that. I do really like these ideas.
Let me ask you, just to be clear for investors and Canadians, would you have to reinvest the entire amount? Could you invest some of the capital gains and keep some, for example, to live off or better your own life?
Whatever you reinvest in Canada will be capital gains tax deferred. Whatever you cash out on, you'll pay capital gains on. So it's very simple. You can put any amount, any share of your proceeds into Canadian investments and enjoy this tax break. But if you want to keep some for yourself, obviously, then the capital gains tax would apply. And I would emphasize as well that I will reverse the Liberal capital gains tax hike that they brought in. Yeah. By the way, while Mark Carney was the economic advisor to the Trudeau government, I would expect no matter what promises they're making now, they will bring back that capital gains hike if they get the chance, when they no longer need your vote, but still need your money. And by contrast, by voting Conservative, you can reinvest in Canada, capital gains tax free. economic rocket fuel to launch our economy.
Okay, I do have to ask you about the latest polling numbers. The latest Nanos poll has a widening gap between Mr. Carney and yourself when the question of
who cares about the polls
is asked. Why do you think that the gap continues to widen?
Well, the choice that Canadians will face at the polls on Election Day is after the lost Liberal decade of rising costs and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb. Do we want to elect the Liberals to a fourth term in power? Or do we want to put Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, unleash resource production, greenlight home building, bring home to Canada our jobs and production so we can stand up to Donald Trump from a position of strength? That's the decision. Fourth term for the failed Liberals, or a real change to put Canada first with a new Conservative government.
Mr. Poilievre, that doesn't answer the question as to why you think that gap continues to widen. You were well ahead.
They're liberal polls. Who cares right now?
Just a few months ago, and now
it's propaganda.
That gap is getting bigger by the day. So why do you think that is? Why do you think Canadians are choosing Mr. Carney as preferred Prime Minister?
Well, they haven't chosen anybody yet. The election has not been held, and when it is held, we will put forward the choice. Do you want a fourth term for the Liberals? I mean, after they've sent crime rates soaring, they've raised your taxes, doubled your debt, doubled housing costs, driven $500 billion south of the border to the United States, while Mr. Carney was the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau. He has the same Liberal MPs, same Liberal ministers, same Liberal promises that they've been breaking for the last decade. If you elect them a fourth time, it will get even worse. That's why we need a real change with a Canada First Conservative government that will, as I said, make it no capital gains tax for reinvestments to bring home and rebuild our economy. That we'll be getting rid of the GST on new homes so that you save up to $65,000 on a housing purchase. We'll be cutting income tax by 15% so that work pays off again. And finally, we're going to get rid of the entire carbon tax, and for real, so that our industries can come back and produce more steel, aluminum, fertilizer, and other industrial products that will allow us the strength to stand up to Donald Trump and the Americans.
As you know, there are reports about infighting on your campaign team. Is your team divided on how best to close that gap?
No, not at all.
At this time?
No. We're united in our purpose of bringing home Canada's promise. I got into this business because I want everyone to have the promise of Canada that I had. I was born to a 16-year-old mom who gave me to two teachers who raised me, telling me that if I worked hard, I could achieve anything in Canada. But after the lost Liberal decade, with housing costs doubled, with food prices rising 36% faster in Canada than in the U.S., our youth can't afford a life. So I want to bring home Canada's promise.
Okay.
And make this a country where hard work gets you a great life in an affordable and beautiful home on a safe street under our proud flag.
So you are saying that your campaign team is not divided at this point. Let me ask you the question that goes with that is, do you feel you have adequately addressed the threats from Washington, both to the economy and to our sovereignty? Canadians are worried about these things.
Yes, in fact, I'm the only leader that has addressed these things. For the last 10 years, I've been saying we need to build pipelines, repeal the No New Pipeline Law, C-69, and remove the energy cap that the Liberals have put in. Mr. Carney wants to keep C-69, which means we will never again build a pipeline in this country. He wants to keep the energy cap, which means that more production will go to the United States. He wants to bring in an industrial carbon tax that I oppose, which will drive industrial production south to the Americans. I've been right on all of these issues from the very beginning. And everything that I've been saying for the last 10 years is not only still true, it's more true than it ever was before. So if you want to continue the lost Liberal decade of rising costs and crime and an economy falling under the thumb of the Americans, then sure, vote for a fourth Liberal term. But if you want to change, to put Canada first then there's only one choice, and that's a new conservative government.
You're talking about diversifying, right? The energy market, getting getting our product to other international markets, and that's one sector. But how would you counter the tariffs? The Liberals have come up with a $2 billion plan to support auto manufacturing, mostly in southern Ontario, and protect and build out. How would you counter some of the wider tariffs? Steel and aluminum are already there. April 2nd is around the corner. Reciprocal tariffs are expected. We don't know how much they would be.
That's a great question. First of all, we should counter tariff the things that we least need, can make ourselves, or buy elsewhere to maximize the impact on the Americans and minimize the impact on ourselves. Secondly, we need to make sure there's liquidity for those firms that are hardest hit so that we keep workers working. Third, we have to get rid of the tariffs that Carney is imposing on our own companies. So the industrial carbon tax is like a self-imposed tariff. It will hammer our energy companies, our natural gas companies, our aluminum and steel companies. They will all be gone in a few years if the Carney carbon tax goes ahead as he has promised. And I'm going to get rid of those self-imposed liberal tariffs so that we can actually bring home production to this country. I think the idea of allowing people to reinvest their capital gains tax-free will be a major advantage as our economy restructures away from the Americans. You need capital investment to do that. You want to build transportation networks to either coast, that's going to take capital. If you want to build a new factory to replace your supply chain south of the border, that's going to take capital. By getting rid of the capital gains tax on reinvested gains in Canada, then we free up billions of dollars to supercharge construction, technology, and the other things we're going to need to be strong enough to stand up to the president from a position of strength.
So I understand what you're saying, and reinvestment would bring more money into the economy generally. But
I agree.
If by Wednesday we are facing, a 25% or a 15% tariff across the board, what more immediate action can you take that will help Canadians through this difficult time?
Like I said, we'll probably need to have some liquidity relief for businesses that are directly affected to get them through either the duration of the trade dispute, or if that turns out to be longer term, to get them transitioned to a new reality. The key is to keep workers working. The workers want paychecks. They want to keep going. And we will do that. But we also have to be stronger and more self-reliant at home. After the lost Liberal decade, you've got like $500 billion of net investment has left Canada to the United States in the last 10 years of Carney and Trudeau. And Mr. Carney is now doubling down on the exact same policies. He might have a different look, but he's the same book of policies. And he will continue to raise taxes on business, block our energy projects. He's in favor of this radical, keep it in the ground, no new pipelines approach. He's got the same radical environmentalists in his key positions. And in fact, he's recruited even more radical Liberals like Gregor Robertson, the Vancouver mayor, who was against all form of pipelines, is now a Liberal candidate. So if you elect Liberals, you're going to get Liberals. You vote the same, you get the same. We need a change to put Canada first. That's what I'm offering.
One last question to you, because I know you're sort of looking at the Liberals and telling Canadians what you think they will get voting that way. What do they get with you? If this is your chance to pitch to Canadians, try to close the gap in the polls, what do you say to Canadians that you have to offer them?
We'll put Canada first for a change. We'll axe taxes, green light housing construction, like getting rid of taxes on home building. We'll green light resource projects. We'll lower tax on investment, work, home building, and energy to bring home hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild our country after the lost Liberal decade. All of this with the purpose of restoring Canada's promise that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful house, protected by brave troops under our proud flag. Canada first, let's bring it home.
Pierre Poilievre, good of you to give us
Not too bad. The only thing that I kind of disagree with a little bit is talking about standing up to President Trump and America. I don't see why we need to be so like anti-American or combative to America. I understand there is a trade war going on, but we can be extremely pro-patriotic here in Canada and still work with our allies and respect America instead of wanting to stand up to them. There's never going to be a time where we actually stand up to America. Their economy is 10 times larger. We're never, ever, ever going to catch up. It's just not going to happen. Even though we have more land than them, we're never going to have more people, more businesses, more infrastructure. That's just not going to happen. So everything else, though, I fully agree with. Let me know your guys' thoughts about that one-on-one sit-down with the reporter. Next up, we're going to take a look at the recent announcement that Pierre Poilievre did in terms of investing into our energy sector. Here we go.
In particular, the incredible workers we have behind us today. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for being here. Thank you for literally building and powering our country. You will have, in these incredible conservative candidates, a team that will put our country first. We have Clifford Small from Central Nova, who is a former fisherman in our Shadow Ministry of Fisheries. I'm very proud to have a Newfoundlander in that role. He's going to expand the seal hunt. He's going to protect our fishery. He's going to put the fish harvesters back in charge of the fishery and take it away from the bureaucrats and the politicians in Ottawa. We have the great Steve Kent from Avalon. We have Corey Curtis from Cape Spear. David Brazel, of course, a great businessman and former interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Newfoundland and Labrador. We have Jonathan Rowe, Terra Nova, and the Peninsulas. And they all understand what Canadians get. Is that this country should be the richest in the world. But after the lost Liberal decade, we've had the poorest growth in all of the G7. The American economy has grown 14 times faster per capita than the Canadian economy has in the same decade. And that, I think, explains why Donald Trump keeps endorsing Mark Carney. He keeps giving Carney support. He said he wants to keep Carney in power after the election. And it's pretty easy to understand why. Carney's policies, which he implemented as Trudeau's economic advisor, have made our economy more weak and reliant on the Americans than ever before. He supported massive carbon taxes while he moved his money out of the country to avoid paying them. He testified against the Northern Gateway pipeline while advising Trudeau against the Energy East pipeline. He supported the anti-pipeline law C-69, the energy cap, and countless other anti-development policies. All of these policy decisions have made us hopelessly reliant on the Americans. And despite making sort of rhetorical hints to the contrary 28 days before the election, Mr. Carney is actually doubling down on all of these radical, keep it in the ground policies that he has supported for the last 10 years of the lost Liberal decade. Here's the reality. We export 98% of our crude oil to the United States, moving from, in fact, the oil that goes from Western Canada to Ontario and Quebec actually has to go through the U.S., meaning Donald Trump has the legal power and the territorial control already to stop Canadian energy from going to Canadian consumers. We sell twice as much goods and services to the Americans as we sell between our provinces because the Liberals will not let us build the infrastructure to move it east-west. And between 2015 and 2020, the Liberals killed $176 billion of known projects that would have boosted our economic independence against the Americans. And that does not include the countless other projects that never appeared because investors took a look at Canada's anti-energy regime and said, we're not even going to bother announcing a plan to invest. These radical Liberal policies that caused the lost Liberal decade drove wages down, taxes up, and everything more expensive. It's no surprise that Canada now ranks 23rd on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business survey. That's up seven places worse than before. And now Mr. Carney wants the Liberals to get a fourth term while promising the same radical keep it in the ground policies. And by the way, on that, let me be clear. When I say he has a keep it in the ground policy, that is not my characterization of his position. I'm going to quote him verbatim. This is not Justin Trudeau or Stephen Guilbeault. This is Mark Carney. Maybe as much as half of oil reserves, proven oil reserves, need to stay in the ground. You hear that? He wants to keep it in the ground, and that includes under the ocean floor. That means that he will not allow any offshore development here in Newfoundland. To keep it in the ground, he would have to block any further projects from going ahead. That means that our single biggest and most valuable resource would not be available to us while the Americans unleash massive production increases and while Mr. Carney's own company profits off petroleum investments outside of Canada. He will shut down competition to his company here in this country. We need to bring dollars and jobs home so that we can be strong enough to stand up to Donald Trump. Carney has the wrong plan, and our blessed country needs a new leader and a new change so that we can reverse course. If Mr. Carney is serious about restoring economic independence, though, because he's now sort of hinting rhetorically that he might consider doing something, he might consider abandoning his principles on the matter of energy. But if he is, let's get specific. Let's get very specific. The energy companies themselves, the 14 biggest of them, wrote all of us a letter. Every national leader, Conservative, Liberal, NDP, Green Bloc, wrote us all a letter with 5 demands. They said, either you do these 5 things or we will not be able to grow and break our dependence on the Americans. They're very specific. 1, repeal the No New Pipelines law and the tanker ban so that we can ship our resources to non-American markets. I voted against C-69. I have always been against C-69. I've said I will repeal C-69, the No New Pipelines liberal law, within 60 days of becoming Prime Minister. Mark Carney supported C-69, and he had a week after he became leader to recall Parliament to repeal it, as I demanded, but he did not. So their position is clear. Second, it now takes, after the lost Liberal decade, it now takes
He's got props.
17 years to get a mine approved, while other countries do it in mere months. We can protect our environment and our population, but do it quickly. Why does it take, what do you learn in year 16 that you couldn't have learned in the 4th month of a review? That's why I have announced I am committed to the Build Canada demand to reduce wait times for permits to 6 months. Mr. Carney continues to support the reckless bureaucratic regime that takes many years and even decades. So again, on that front, the decision is very clear.
He walks over to the checkbox.
Next, the cap. The Liberals have imposed an energy cap. This will prevent our industry from growing and even force it to shrink in size because the policy is to reduce the output of the industry. I have said I oppose the energy cap. Just last week, Mr. Carney and his environment minister said they will keep it in place. So again, the choice is clear. After a lost Liberal decade, do you want to keep in place an energy cap by electing the Liberals to a 4th term, or do you want to put Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will scrap the cap?
There he goes.
And then we have the carbon tax, the famous carbon tax. You know, up until about 2 months ago, the Liberals said that if we didn't have a carbon tax, the whole planet would be lit aflame. They said that you needed to pay more as a single mom to drive your kids to school, while Mark Carney flies around on private jets burning fuel like it's going out of style. And now, after having this tax in place for 7 years and keeping the carbon tax law on the books as we speak, what they now say is that they're going to hide the tax from the pump for 28 days leading up to the election, in the hopes that people will forgive and forget, re-elect them, after which they will use the carbon tax law to reinstate the full tax at a higher rate with no rebate whatsoever. Canadians are not stupid. They won't be fooled. Furthermore, Mr. Carney says he wants a bigger industrial carbon tax on steel, aluminum, potash, natural gas, cement, concrete, and other heavy industries, all of which are necessary. This roof would fall in without those basic materials. If you tax the industrial backbone of the country, you tax every single person who lives in a modern economy. That tax increase will drive jobs away. This is another area where Trump and Carney agree. They both want to tax Canadian industry. Carney with a carbon tax, Trump with a tariff. I want neither, and that's why the choice in this election is whether you elect the Liberals to a fourth Liberal term after the lost Liberal decade, who will bring in a bigger industrial carbon tax, or whether you want to put Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will axe the tax for everyone, for everything, for good, for real, for a change.
We can't afford another Liberal term, man.
And then you've got Indigenous loan guarantees. Our First Nations friends want to build prosperity for their people. They want schools and hospitals. They want clean drinking water. And they want the ability to fund it with own source revenue by having investments in resource projects that will send their economies into liftoff. I want Indigenous people to be the richest people in the world. But that means allowing them the loan guarantees to get their investments into these projects from the start. Now the Liberals want to control the loan guarantees through bureaucracy. We want to give control to First Nations so that they can make these investments and we can get quicker to yes. We will also allow First Nations governments to collect a share of federal income tax, corporate income tax, from the companies that harvest resources on their land. The Liberals will do no such thing. So again, the choice is, after the lost Liberal decade, do we want to elect them to a fourth term where they block resources for First Nations, or whether we want to put Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government that will unlock the power of First Nations workers and investment in our resource sector. So again, here we have it. Let me just stand over here so everyone can see this. Here we have it, folks. These are all the demands. These are all the demands that our energy sector has made. These are not my demands. These demands come from the 14 biggest energy companies in Canada. They're the ones that put a letter together, and they said very clearly and very simply, it's not a matter of debate. Either you do these 5 things, or we will stay dependent on the Americans. There is no way to build pipelines, LNG plants, to harvest our resources unless we do these 5 things. Mr. Carney, he has made some vague mutterings about how he might be inclined to change his position that he took over the last decade. But it's time for him to get specific. Will he reverse himself on the Liberal no new pipelines law and tanker ban, the Liberal delays on project approvals, the Liberal cap on our energy, the Liberal industrial carbon tax, the Liberal patronizing approach to our First Nations? I ask you to pose that question to him directly. And if his answer is anything but yes, then if he's not willing to say that he's abandoning all of his principles and his policies, then you can be very sure that under a 4th Liberal term, our energy sector will continue to be crushed and the Americans will continue to win our money, our jobs, our energy at huge discounts. It is no wonder that Donald Trump is so determined to see Mark Carney stay in power. Mark Carney is a weak, out-of-touch leader who never puts Canada first. He had 3 passports up until not long ago. He moved his headquarters out of Canada to New York City. While supporting carbon taxes here, he invested in American coal. While opposing pipelines here, he profited off of foreign pipelines. He continues to have those foreign conflicts, which will prevent him from doing what's right for Canada. Just yesterday, we saw those conflicts play out when he refused to remove Paul Chang a Liberal candidate who had said that a Canadian Conservative candidate should be turned over on a bounty to the Chinese government that wants to imprison or possibly even kill him because he is a political dissident. Mr. Carney said that Mr. Chang could stay on as a candidate. It wasn't until midnight when we found out the police were involved, because it is a potential criminal offense, that the candidate stepped aside himself, not being pushed out by Carney, but because he decided on his own. Mr. Carney will never put our country first. He will always put himself first. And that is the choice in this election. After the lost Liberal decade of rising costs and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb, do the Liberals deserve a fourth term?
No, sir.
Or is it time to put Canada first for a change? A change that means axing taxes, building homes, unleashing our resource jobs, and bringing home production so we can stand up to Trump from a position of strength. And most of all, to bring home the Canadian promise that hard work gets you a great life, in a beautiful home, on a safe street, protected by brave troops under a proud flag. Let's bring it home. Thank you.
Oh, incredible. Wow. Absolutely incredible. Inspirational, man. He barely looks at any notes, if at all. No teleprompter. The guy was built for this. He is so good at this. This is his calling. Man, we got to make sure that no matter what, Pierre gets in. Wow, this is exciting. Exciting times for Canada.
Zach Power with VOCM. You spent time campaigning to axe the tax. Prices have gone down today at the pumps, and at least for now. Carney has beat you to the punch in that regard. How are you going to compete with Carney now going forward to bring down prices at the pumps for consumers?
Well, first of all, Mr. Carney was saying that we needed to hike the carbon tax up until a few months ago. So we know that Liberals have not gotten rid of the carbon tax. They've simply hid it from the gas pumps a few weeks before the election, all while keeping the carbon tax law in place that will allow them to raise the tax higher than ever before. They had this tax in place for 7 years, and now they expect you to believe that they've had a sudden epiphany 28 days before the election. Canadians are not stupid. They know that if the Liberals are reelected, they will bring in a bigger, higher carbon tax with no rebate. And they also know that the industrial carbon tax remains in place on the things that Canadians need: oil and gas, steel, cement, aluminum, and countless other industrial products. Those costs will be passed on to consumers and workers through higher prices and lower wages. If you want to axe the tax for real, for everyone, for everything, for a change, then you have to vote for a new Conservative government that puts Canada first. I should add one more thing I forgot to mention. In addition to supporting all of these necessary demands to unlock our energy production, I want to announce today as well that I support Newfoundland and Labrador's plan to double production of oil and gas. I also will grant rapid permits for LNG Newfoundland Labrador, which will pipe gas from the Jan d'Arc oil field to a floating liquefaction facility, which will then be shipped off to Europe to break European dependence on Putin and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people.
Wow.
In other words, you're for that? Look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
En français.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, the only way we're really going to start to shift off of American dependence is with a Conservative government, right? Like, I do think that we should be selling to America, but we should also be expanding and selling elsewhere. We also need to get that pipeline done. And I've heard that Carney doesn't want to get the pipeline. He came out today saying he doesn't want to get the pipeline done. Super freaking bizarre. Absolutely weird. Let's just skip through this here if we can find more English parts. I don't know if there are any.
We are looking at that question.
Ben Clary, NTV News. When it comes to Marine Atlantic fees, our provincial government has called for those fees to be lifted if provincial trade barriers are opened. Would you eliminate those fees?
I'm definitely open to it. We are looking at that question right now. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have the right to get across our country just like everyone else. And after the lost Liberal decade, with crime and costs up and our economy down under America's thumb, the Liberals don't deserve a fourth term of hitting Newfoundlanders with higher fees and more expenses. So it's something that I'm willing to look at. I know that Cliff has been on my case about this for a long time. He's on my case about a lot of things. He's a very persistent guy. But I will add that there's a lot of other savings we're going to provide Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Our Canada First plan will cut income tax by 15% for the average worker. So hard work once again pays off and people bring home more of each dollar they earn. We're going to take the GST off new homes to save you up to $65,000 on a home purchase and $3,000 a year on mortgage payments. We're going to obviously get rid of the entire carbon tax. And finally, I announced the other day that there will be zero capital gains tax on anything reinvested in Canada. I call it the Canada First Reinvestment Tax Cut. You sell an asset, you reinvest it in Canada, you get a full capital gains tax deferral. You can roll it over, grow it, hire more people, build more factories, increase the number of jobs. One day down the road, when you decide to cash out for good and go off into the sunset, you'll end up paying the tax. But in the meantime, you can keep compounding the jobs, the construction, and the economic power. This is going to be like jet fuel, no, rocket fuel, to launch our economy above the Americans and make us truly an economic fortress. Thank you.
En français.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible, man. Pierre gets me so stoked for the future of Canada. That concludes today's video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be super awesome if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all later on. Bye for now.